Welcome to Double Barrel Non-Duality. Once a month, we have this Zoom meeting that is for our paid channel members at the sustaining member level or above. And I answer everybody's questions. And I also have a co-host every month. And it's a different person every month, and they will also answer the questions. So we usually just tag team. Sometimes we switch back and forth. So if you're interested, the sustaining members level and above, you'll have this plus one live stream on YouTube where I answer your questions through messaging every single month. So this month's co-host is Barine Duman. And I have one hand up. It's Tamiko. Welcome.
Hi, Angelo. Wait, I'm so sorry. Speaker view.
Nope, we're good.
Thank you. Good to see you. Thank you.
Good to see you.
Um, we talked at the last double barrel, and that time I wasn't quite sure why I was raising my hand. I just felt like I wanted to connect. And you asked me how I was feeling, and I said that I'm feeling a tremoring. And you asked me where did I feel the tremoring specifically? And I said I felt it in my neck, in my upper body, my shoulders. And and after we talked in a couple, like the days after, like the day or 2 days after, I was sitting in meditation, and um for many years, there's been what has felt like this imbalance, like for like the last 10 years or so, where I always had a feeling of an imbalance between my my right brain and my left brain, or like the two sides of my head. And it was always just this feeling of like this feeling right here in my head of like this sense of like this is where the thoughts come out. This is like I called it like the thought factory, or it just felt like this is where the thoughts come out.
Mm.
And it started to feel like some imbalance, like a structural imbalance started to kind of balance itself somehow. I don't even quite remember exactly what happened. Um, and there was an intuition or just a feeling of like there was always this feeling also like a hole in my aura or something, like if I could just patch it or calm it down or do something, and then the thoughts would stop. And so there was just this intuition after we talked of like, well, what what happens if I just focus on this side of my head, on the opposite side? Like what's there? And it was like it kind of opened up something that felt a lot more boundless or open, or like, and at first it was like, whoa, like oh good, like too much. And then it kind of over the next couple of days it started to kind of balance out, and it just I feel like something is less, something just feels like the two sides of my brain are kind of meshing more gently, like a mesh or something. And I just wanted to share that. And it also kind of feels very sort of impersonal and kind of stark, where it's like it made me feel just like something was just so technical. Like, like I felt like it was like auto mechanics, like I was like a car just being put up on the lift, and it's like, well, let's just like align the tires or something. And I just felt like I wanted to share that. And then alongside of that, in recent days, there's been a lot of kind of in mundane external life situation stuff. There's been like a lot of like dense energy with kind of more tribal dynamics with extended family, and it's kind of hit me. It's, I felt kind of slammed by some interactions, and I kind of feel like, well, that's kind of the way it goes, of like really subtle things like subtle openings happen, and then it's like um then it's like a wave happens of stuff that kind of tests it, and I just hope that I don't and it's caused me to fixate, and I don't want to, get too fixated on things in a mundane sense, because I don't want all this conditioning to come back in. So I just felt like a feeling to connect, and if you had any sense of any kind of some blind spot that you could be picking up or
Mm.
something. And
Yeah.
that's
Thanks for your update. I don't pick up a blind spot in what you're describing. I think it's beautiful that you intuitively figured out how to do that. And I think as this plays out more and more for people, realization as it kind of goes into a sort of deeper insight, it becomes more common that we learn about energy management and rebalancing and so forth. It can happen like all at once in one sense, like it's something that felt stuck for a long time, and you just have this idea, well, what if I do this? And it can also be subtle things that happen little by little. But it sounds awesome. And the only other thing I thought of saying was when you mentioned being around your family or being around people that, whatever, sometimes can be triggering, all these things that come up in situations where we're interacting with others, is consider that the same thing you described in reference to like one side of your brain to the other, you might be able to do that with other people as well. Not like balancing their energies, but seeing that is there a blank spot in my experience of that person over there, or is there something that feels polarized that's here but it's not there, and you might be able to notice that energy shift in that exact thing because what you describe is intuitively obvious to me, and it's also in everything. It's in all objects, all apparent form, but it always starts here. It usually starts here in the head or in the body, in the seeming individual. But over time, that can rebalance into all of your environment as well.
okay. So when you say focus on what's happening in the other person with balancing within me or external, like
Well,
what kind
it's kind of like neither because the illusion of duality appears in the mind as a construct, but energetically, you may be able to notice that, oh, there's something that feels like me over here. What's over here? And you may feel the same thing. There's something that feels like me here. What's over there? And you may notice this is subtle stuff that I'm talking about, right? You may notice that you actually have an ability to rebalance energy in that way as well. It may not even be with people, it could be with anything. Something to
of
consider.
Okay, I'm gonna let that percolate and just sit with that.
Yeah.
And thank you. And I'm so excited that is her name
Bar
Barney is the double
Barina.
barrel
Yeah, it's
Barina, because
Barina. You
that's
saw her
the
in the
doc.
documentary, yeah?
Yeah, it was awesome. It's
Yeah.
awesome. It's great. Thank
Awesome.
you.
All right. Brina, did you
Thank
want
you.
to say anything else or add anything?
Maybe just really briefly that don't be scared of heavier or denser energies, and that they'll pull you out of your clarity. They'll definitely pull you out of your clarity, in my experience. And the more you don't want them to, the harder they'll pull you.
Right.
But the more you can, it's more like, can you stay awake as the wave eats you? Because you're going to go back into being like totally enmeshed human, but you can watch the enmeshment happen and then you can watch it let go. And you can kind of like you not just watch, but like you can you can feel it kind of like grab you and then you can feel it let go. And you can tell that you can't do shit about it. I used to hate that feeling so much. That was like one of the worst things about whatever happened, that feeling of like re-hooking. Because it was like it's like coming off of a drug constantly. Like you're having a blast and then it sucks again. And then you're having a blast and it sucks again. And you can't really, I couldn't make rhyme or reason out of what hooked me and what didn't.
Yeah. Yeah, it feels sometimes like a wave coming over you, like excruciating, but it's like I just feel like I have to tell myself, just don't contract, don't fixate, don't like don't get caught up in identity, just let the energy go through. Does that make sense?
The last thing you said really resonates for me. I think the don't contract or like don't buy in is hard. You know, like you're gonna buy in, but there's like a it's almost like there's one layer that's like, oh, don't go into the ego, don't go into the person, don't become small again. But that's also part of the ego and the person and the smallness itself. So you can let all of that happen, but while it's happening, like the lights are always on. Like you're all already seeing everything that's happening at a step behind the one that's struggling with the not wanting to contract again.
Yes,
Hopefully that's helpful.
got it. Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Tomiko.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Excuse me. Let's go. We'll get probably to everyone in this list for sure, but let me go to the bottom for fun. It is Lisa Smith, I think. Lisa.
Is that better? Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Oh, okay. Hi.
Thanks for
Hi,
bringing your pet.
Angelo. Yeah,
Hi.
this is Willoughby. So this is my first time speaking to everybody, and I've wanted to the last couple of times, but I just, had a lot going on. So just a little bit about my background. I last year I went to Costa Rica and did some ayahuasca because I'd been in therapy for 4 years just dealing with a bunch of family stuff, and just felt like my counseling had kind of taken me to where to where I could go, and I wanted to just something about it was pushing me further, and that kind of cracked the shell. Probably would have just done the 1 week, but no, Lisa just decides, well, let's do 2 weeks, so so it was a lot, but it was really good. Had some great insights, and death of the ego and a sacred surgery. And but what it did show me was a memory that I'd had as a child of some sexual abuse, and that kind of cracked open the shell. And that has just, in since I've been integrating that in the last year, has been all to do with, my mother gave me to a pedophile. I was given to other people for sexual abuse. I was, the scapegoat of our family. Growing up, my brother was also sexually abusing me, and so when I came back and I tried to, talk to my sisters about it, it just didn't sit well with them. And so in a nutshell, I basically found myself here doing the work, on my own. And it can be a really lonely place because a lot of the friends that I had, I found with all the years of therapy I've had, I found to be quite superficial. And a lot of them, there's just no draw for me anymore to get into the dramas and all that stuff. It's just not what I want. So the last year I've just basically spent here on my own on my farm. Left my husband, by the way, and that was something on top of that as well. And so, but I guess my question is, I just kind of want to know that I'm on the right path. I decided, after all the abuse that I realized I'd been through, that I just, becoming fully realized just became my path. That's all I wanted to do. It's all I've been doing for the last year. Like I said, I quit my job, so I'm doing it full time. I've had some pretty amazing insights. But it just seems like it's always just, like I just wake up and it's just the same shit every day, like the same blah feeling. There's really been not a lot of joy or happiness in my life. And I just, like Angelo, you talk about, the payoffs and all of that stuff, like, and I just want to start to see some of that. And I know other people have been abused and have worse abuse than what I've had. And I know that we all suffer, and, I understand all of that part of it. But I feel like and I know this is wrong, but it feels like sometimes it's just a little personal because I'm just trying so hard. I've given everything to this experience, and I just, yeah. So I guess I just want to know that I'm on the right path, and just feeling really overwhelmed, and I just, part of me just wants to give and give, and that's the thing is about me personally, is that all I want to do is give to other people and feel their pain and heal their pain too, and I don't know. I guess my question is there anything else that I could be or should be doing?
Okay. Yeah. Thank you for the background and question. Barina, did you want to start or would you like me to?
I can take a crack at it. I'm sorry you're going through all of that. That's a really startling thing to realize on Aya.
Do you want to say hi real quick, Lisa? So Barina's
Hi,
looking at you.
can you see me?
Yes, I can see you. And
Okay.
everything on my end is on gallery view, so I don't know
Oh,
if
you're
that.
on gallery view. Okay, gotcha.
What should I put it on speaker view?
If you put it on speaker view, then when you're talking to somebody, you'll see their face.
Okay,
But they have
perfect.
to say hi because otherwise you'll just be looking at me.
Got it. Okay.
Okay.
Oh yeah, that's much better. Hi. Um,
Okay.
so I'm sorry you're going through all of that. I think ayahuasca can be really startling. I want to say one thing, and I hope it's not offensive just because I don't know you and I don't know the thing, like the background. Um, Make sure that you're confident that it really happened because ayahuasca and other things can bring in transpersonal experiences. And
Mm,
I'm not doubting you at all. And the way you presented it makes me think that you really like felt into it and you know that this is real.
Oh
But
yeah.
I've had friends who've had a lot of like weird false memories that sort of
mm,
weren't theirs. And I do think most of the time you can tell, but you have to actually try to tell.
Yeah.
So please don't take that the wrong way. I'm not at
No,
all
no.
doubting what you said, but just because ayahuasca, all the psychedelics can be really tricky, and you can
Mm,
kind of like import things that aren't like mind structures that aren't always yours.
yes.
Um, and then I'm sorry about the continuing, like, it sounds like a lot of burning, and that's definitely been part of my path and part of a lot of people's path. I would encourage you to follow that urge to help people, and I would probably do it in the least spiritual way possible, like volunteer at a soup kitchen,
Mm,
go, hang out at a cancer ward for children, like whatever draws you, but isn't super like enmeshed in these concepts and this language. I think that would be really important. I think ideally you wouldn't be alone for super long. And so you do need to find a squad of some sort. And it doesn't have to
mm,
be a spiritual squad that understands you, but it does have to be some kind of squad that you got to let your human body have friends, because otherwise you're going to be
yeah.
dealing with another layer of, it's almost like if you were going through this awakening and healing trauma and discovering trauma, but you also stopped eating and drinking, like it would be worse because the biology needs to eat and drink, and the biology probably needs some basic
Yes.
attachment needs met. So I would just encourage you to keep doing what you're doing, but also give the human what it needs as much as possible, because you don't wake up faster through
Hmm.
suffering. In my experience, you don't wake up faster if you stop eating or drinking or socializing.
Right.
That's all I got, Angelo.
Thank you.
Yeah,
okay,
good
cool.
luck.
Thank you. Yeah, Lisa. So, um, yeah, I guess to just answer your specific question, I think you are on the right track. Um, it feels authentic when you say that this is the most important thing for you.
Mm,
And I wouldn't encourage people just to say that sentence like a spell, but when someone says that and they mean it, that's
mm,
about as good as you're going to do when it comes to awakening, to really, really just be oriented to that and know what that means, that it's going to take you beyond the way you see the world right now. It just will. It's going to have effects in your experience of identity. And if you know all of that and you genuinely mean that this is the most important thing, I find what that does is it makes it central to your experience. It
mm,
also can lead to a very steep path. So just be aware that's not always fun, and often very not fun, and probably most importantly disorienting. It can be
mm,
disorienting if you're really on a steep path with this. So, but you feel, to me, you seem to be very confident that this is the right orientation for you. And that's what I want you to trust, is just trust your own instinct on that. The points Barina said about the ayahuasca and all that, I agree with her. And I've also seen similar things. Both memories come through that are your memories, and memories come through that are vague and a little confusing and not so sure. And, so I do agree with her that it's good to just have that, um, I don't know, discernment,
mm,
yeah, it can create all kinds of strange mind states and picking up things that aren't yours and stuff. Um, the other part of it, though, is if that is indeed your history, that stuff is very deeply rooted typically.
yeah,
And don't be surprised that if you're doing a lot of trauma work, uh, one way or another. It just, yeah, I mean, I've worked with so many different people who have had sexual abuse at a young age. It just tends to cause so much trauma at so many levels that,
mm,
it sucks. You didn't deserve it. You didn't choose it, but you're carrying it. So just be as gentle and compassionate as you can with anything that comes up inside you, and be
Yeah.
willing to, yeah, and be willing to expose yourself to processes that can really help with this kind of stuff. And of course, there's trauma therapy and different modalities like that. The other two things I'll bring up would be, one is circling with a good group. Like, so the one I do periodically is with James McCleary,
Mm.
the Inside Circle guys. Rick does Outside Circle on Zoom every week, I think, for free. So those kinds of processes, from what I've personally witnessed and personally experienced, are probably the most powerful deep shadow work stuff I've ever seen, honestly. And it's also really nice because it's relational and it doesn't
Yeah.
require any kind of substance that can confuse things and have side effects.
Hmm.
So consider that. There's online versions of it. I will say not all circling is the same. There is circling out there that can even be toxic. That's not, really guided by good facilitators and so forth. It's a very, very mixed bag. So just be clear on what you're seeing in that group, how oriented the group is to doing deep work, and how skilled the facilitators are to go where people need to go with it.
Hmm.
Anyway, so that's something to consider. I more and more am recommending it, and I've had done a few of them over the last few months, and I tend to give them away to channel members, the spots for these things. So keep an eye on that if you ever want to do that. I think that's very helpful in deep shadow stuff. As far as your orientation to awakening and the insights, that's great. I don't really have anything to add. Just keep opening your heart to that, and opening everything, really, your mind and spirit and your energetics. I agree with Barina that having interactions with other people can be very important and helpful. Although there is a energy management thing that starts to happen over time where you realize, like, that you can't control the fact that the more open you get, the more you're going to pick up from people. You're just going to absorb their stuff. It's
Yeah.
going to happen. Yeah. And it's really important to see that. If you don't see it, then that's very confusing because you're not really even sure, like, what's causing it. Is it mine? Is it theirs? But when you see that, yeah, I can spend so much time around certain people, more triggering people, maybe less time, and
Hmm.
managing that energy, that's just taking responsibility for your own
Yeah.
openness, and it will become more and more open. So some discernment there is important, but I would agree, finding, maybe a small group of people or a friend or friends, or that really gets this, that has walked this path before you, can be
Hmm.
really, really helpful. Yeah.
Can I just ask you one quick question?
Mhm.
When I was 7, because this was the reason I actually decided to go to do ayahuasca in the first place, was to have this question answered. And I know that you were doing a double barrel, and I can't remember the young girl's name. She's quite very young with long curly hair. And I was,
Alma.
yeah, and she was saying when the shift happened, and I remember her saying something about, I said, oh, well, maybe that's what happened to me. So when I was 7 years old, I was obviously, there was a lot of sexual abuse happening already at that time. But I was laying in bed and it just felt like something lifted out of my body and left. And it was like half of me just like left. And then the next day, I just remember everything was darker and nothing really made sense. And I told my mom about it, and she ended up taking me to a psychiatrist. They were talking, saying depersonalization, I don't know. But I've lived this way ever since. And so
Mhm.
when I listened to the video of Alma, I thought, oh, well, maybe that's normal, because all this time, all these filters that I have, I thought was just from childhood trauma, that something happened, that like maybe, in ayahuasca, they call it a soul fracture, when the body just has, there's so much trauma that you just check out, right? So I want to know what that was, and if what I'm feeling is what everybody else feels when they talk about the filters in their life. Because for me, like, why would I have, has anyone else like actually felt that pop? And it was like a pop and a go. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a little hard to pinpoint what that was. It partially sounds like a dissociative event, actually, like, so, because you said you felt like you almost weren't there, and then felt
Yeah.
uncomfortable. Yeah. So children dissociate, and they can dissociate, but they learn often to dissociate, especially with severe trauma. They learn to dissociate because of trauma, and
Hmm.
that can take all kinds of forms. Like, it can create, dissociative identities. It can also just create, a kind of tendency to just get up into the head frequently, which most people have anyway. So there's a whole broad scale of how that can come forward and affect you as a child and affect you as an adult.
Yeah.
But it sounds dissociative to me.
Yeah.
Like not 100% because that was a long time ago, obviously. And
Yeah.
yeah, but also what we're doing as we're waking up is we're actually kind of cutting off our own ability to dissociate at some point where
Mm,
we're actually like, no, you can't actually leave presence. Presence is just this. And the ability to like pull back from it and disappear into my mind just goes away at some
mm,
point, so you're reversing the tendency to dissociate, and that's going to be directly tied to shadow material coming up. It just will.
okay.
That's what
Yeah.
happens, right? When we dissociate, there's a relationship between dissociation and emotional repression for sure.
Mhm.
The emotions can stay repressed.
Yeah.
They may come out sideways, they may come out in toxic ways even, and we may be unconscious to it because it's unconscious material, but it stays kind of repressed, not in right up into consciousness. So the more we through awakening, through mindfulness practices and so forth, the more we become like consistently present, the less we can actually dissociate and keep that stuff down. That's
Hmm.
why after a proper awakening, like a first awakening, you feel great for weeks, maybe a couple months or something, and then all kinds of shadow stuff starts pouring in. It's like, whoa, where did all this come from? Well, you've been accumulating it,
Hmm.
innocently, but yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So that's the kind of connection between dissociation and emotional repression. I would say just be as kind as you possibly can to yourself, as gentle with yourself, and parenting yourself in the relative,
Hmm.
and give yourself what you need.
Yeah.
Whether it's interactions with people, whether it's time in solitude, meditation, all these healing practices, somatic practices, and explore relational work that can be
Hmm.
really help move this stuff through because
Yeah.
a lot of it's going to come.
And the fear barrier that I've come against, I resisted it the first time because it feels like I was hunted as a child.
Hmm.
So by this pedophile. So that fear, it feels like the same kind of fear. I've managed to
Hmm.
go through two fear barriers already, and just like I'm really good. I can sit with it for hours for whatever comes up. But I just want to make sure that that is safe, that that's not, I'm not bringing up old trauma from my childhood. How is the fear barrier different from the fear I felt of being hunted as a child? Like how it's still safe though, right? Like the fear
Oh,
is still,
totally. If
yeah.
it's
So,
coming up now, it's safe.
okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
it
That's
won't
all I
feel
need.
safe.
Yeah.
Your
No,
mind
it
won't tell
doesn't.
you it's safe when it's happening,
No,
but it's
no.
okay. Yeah,
Okay.
and it's not new. Again, it's like
Yeah.
awakening doesn't even people with very little conventional trauma, when they get
Hmm.
into deeper realization, they'll go through existential terror. It'll
Yeah.
happen.
Yeah.
You're in a sense you're used to it. You're familiar with it, so you're
Yeah.
actually in a good position from that standpoint. You just
Yeah.
may get a lot of it
Yeah.
periodically for a while or whatever. But
Yeah.
yeah, just stay with it. If it's appearing here, it's fine. And you don't need to go digging because the stuff will just keep coming as
Yeah.
it needs to.
Oh, it
Yeah.
does. It
Yeah.
does.
Yeah.
Can
Okay.
I, can I make one quick suggestion based on what you said about the thing, the pop and the leaving?
Yeah.
It's coming through really strong intuitively. I would do a lot of physical stuff if I were in your shoes. I would do like as much like the trauma work, like make it as somatic as possible, like TRE, trauma release exercise are
I do
good.
TRE. Yeah. My
Okay,
body
great.
spontaneously goes into TRE
Yep.
all the
Yep,
time. Even when I'm
totally.
sleeping, it all of a sudden we're going.
Yep.
Like, okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that, I mean, like in like a Hindu system, that's a lot of
Yeah.
the releasing of the knots and the closures from this life, from other lives, if you believe in that kind of stuff. But
I
also
do.
just like lift weights,
Yeah.
swim, go on lots of runs. Like don't make the body handle all of it while
Yeah.
your mind does what it's doing. Like don't abandon the body's need to like move it and
Okay.
stabilize as much as
Okay.
possible.
Yeah, that's a good suggestion. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay. Thank you both.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Okay. All right. Let's go up to Majid. Majid.
Hi, Angelo. Thank you.
Hey, good to see you.
See you both. I think my question is brief. I've stopped trying to put it in a certain way. I think it's coming through. How do I, how does one love selfing? I think my issue is no self-realization, feeling no self doesn't come, that hasn't come, it hasn't been very challenging. And I've realized finding love for the selfing parts or that mechanism has been the challenging thing. This was kind of alive just in the last few days. I've just noticed, that the old mechanism of popping out into the room, it's still very active. It is an old safety mechanism, feeling everyone else's feelings. Even what I think is authentic expression, which is quite childlike, quite innocent. I realize leaning into those was a coping mechanism. And there's a little bit of bitterness, but I've worked with that. And the question I was going to ask is how do I let these parts just be themselves naturally? The immediate response was just let them be naturally. But I was wondering what comes up for you guys.
Sure. Yeah. What comes up for me in regards to the way you described it or asked the question is the selfing mechanism. How to love it to me is to see it clearly for what it is and see its components actually, right? Is it a sensation in the moment? And it may be different. It may change as, to some degree, but is it a sensation? Where's the sensation? Then is there a proprioceptive experience to it? And then is there a thought about it? And in one sense, all three of those are loved slightly differently, maybe. So for instance, to love a thought or a narrative for me is to give it space and sit and let unbound consciousness be there. That always diffuses it and calms everything for me. So that's the thought portion. The physical sensation, how do you love it? By not running from it. Don't dissociate. Don't try to fix it. Don't try to change it. Don't try to heal it. Just feel it. So seeing it is important to see what's actually there. Like like I said, is it a thought? Is it a visual image in the mind? Is it a sensation? And what combination? It's often a combination. And when it's combined and kind of conglomerated and sort of heterogeneous but stuck together, that's often when we feel like blocked, contracted, confused, or just something we can't get down into. It's often because we're a little confused about what it actually is. So look closely at be interested enough in it to look closely at it, and then be interested in its components and to drop deeply into them, however that needs to happen. Does that like resonate? And the love will come naturally. I personally don't find that just like saying I love you to things inside being like, oh, I love this fear or something. It's like that to me is a little dissociative in my experience. The fear is just fear, like pure fear. That's how you love fear, is to be pure fear, to die into it. It's kind of a Zen thing in a way, you know? Yeah. That's my answer. So love is, it's not like it's either here or it's not, and it's not something you do. It's always here. It's like kind of like an acknowledgement. It's all about acknowledgement. Yeah, and willingness to be fluid with your experience, to let it take you where it needs to take you. Don't fight it. Is that helpful?
Yeah, I feel a shift. So yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Cool. Well, hey, I couldn't do any better than that. So let's see what Barina has to offer. Maybe Barina will give you 2 shifts. Say hi to her when you see her face.
Can you hear me?
I
Can you tell me how to pronounce your name too?
It's Majid.
Majid. Okay, great. I have a different answer than Angelo, or a slightly different answer, but it might be different because it's wrong. So let's keep that in mind. Don't hold too tightly to this. I had a really big blowout experience into, I don't know, a couple different stages of awakening that had no self in there and then kind of like wavered in and out, I think below that and back to no self for years actually. And then after about 3 years of it, I came crashing out of it into like humanness really hard. And I don't know if Angelo has the memory for this, but there were a lot of like frantic voice messages to Angelo, like, what the fuck? I feel like I'm dying. Like nothing is good anymore. All the suffering is back. Like, how's it going backwards? Like, and to me, it felt like being like squished back into a teacup or something. Like I'd expanded to the size of the cosmos, and now someone was like stuffing me back into a teacup. And it was horrible. And it was like I felt everything, like related to the undissociation point he was making to the lady before you. Like I felt everything like a 2-year-old. And it's bad enough to feel like normal 2-year-old frustrations like a 2-year-old, but then to feel like I hate my job or my relationship is hurting my feelings like a 2-year-old, like more sophisticated, like more complex egoic stuff with the intensity of a 2-year-old it was horrible. And I had the same thing. I was like, I hate this thing. Like I hate being stuck in a human experience. And it was like rehumaning. Um, and Angela gave me the same sort of like you can like dismember it or like you can take the pieces apart. Like you're not actually dying. Like you're having a thought of like, oh my God, I'm dying. And then there's like feeling in your solar plexus. And I could disassemble it like that for about like 2, 3 months into this process. I would have to like stop a lot. Like I was in 2 really intense relationships back to back. And during the first one, I would have to like set my phone down or leave the room and be like, okay, that's a thought, that's a sensation, that's a thought, that's a sensation. And I could like disassemble it. But at one point, it got so intense that I couldn't disassemble it. Like it didn't matter. Like it just sort of vacuumed me back into the human experience. And it just sucked. Like, I don't have an answer. I did like 3 years of that. After like 3 years of just blown out, beautiful, light-filled bliss, it was like 3 years of these are the worst feelings I've ever had. And for me, it was all relationship, but I suspect everyone has like a thing that you can get worked on. And so everything I didn't want to feel relationally just got pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed. But somehow, like the bliss or the thing that broke in the first place was kind of in the background. So it never felt quite as real as it did before, but somehow it felt worse, like bodily or like experientially. It was worse, but less persuasive. Um, and I didn't do anything. Like I really didn't. I tried every form of meditation I knew. I got really into Tibetan Buddhism. I like started praying to weird multi-armed deities. Sometimes that helped a little bit. Like I did the scene in The Mummy where the mummy's coming. It's an old movie at this point, but like the mummy's coming at him and he's holding up like a cross and then he's holding up a Star of David and he's holding up an ankh. Like I did that basically, pretty ungracefully, I would say. And at the end of it, I just got stuffed back into the teacup and like made my life good in like a very boring, slow way. Like I made it so I like my work. I made it so that I'm in a really happy relationship. I made it so that but I did it very like grimy and like not awake. And at the end of it, I kind of love being a human now, but in like a very strange way. It's more like I woke up like mid-acid trip and I was a bird. And I'm like, what? Look at these weird fucking arms and I've got weird legs and they're kind of scaly. Like I feel very human. And now, of course, now that I sort of like totally gave up on the other awakening thing, the light and the expansiveness and all of that just kind of floods back in now when I'm not trying for it. But the loving came almost by being shoved into a form that was like really uncomfortable, like almost like shape shifting back into a Barina that I had almost like forgotten how to be. And I couldn't find any way out of it. The disassembling thing that Angelo said, it might be that if your mind is trained better, or if like you might be able to do it, or it might just be different paths. I couldn't keep doing it. Like every time I stepped up my game, the universe would step up the circumstantial fire and make it worse and make it to some level I couldn't stay disidentified. So I just fully re-identified. But at the end of that re-identification process, it's like you're not a human anymore, or it's like a human isn't what it was when it started. You're like a person and you've got all these like selfie features, but they feel so foreign. And so it's not quite love, but it's more like awe and weirdness for me. Oh, like, oh my God, this is what like love feels like. This is what attachment feels like. This is what embarrassment feels like. I was telling Angela, like, I had a reason to feel embarrassment recently. I was like, oh my God, that's such a weird sensation. Like, I haven't had that one in a while, like self-consciousness. And that's what I mean. Like, you're almost like reformed into something, but it's not the same thing it was when it started. But while you're being reformed into it, it's just ugly for me. It was just gnarly.
I really, really appreciate that answer. I think Angela's approach will always be there moving forward, but to me it's felt like I'm being shown how to love being human again. Like what you described about like I was a bird and all of a sudden I'm human again. The image I got was I'm 3 raccoons in a trench coat trying to be human. It was just such a silliness and it feels really weird. And
Yeah.
so I'm going to embrace the weirdness, and I don't think I can stop the insight and the analysis of like, ooh, this is this is that. But there's so much, it just doesn't work the way it used to. I also don't feel like I don't think I've ever been in charge, but this part of my journey just feels, it's trying to teach me how to love being human, how to love my life.
The not being in charge is really well said for me because for me that like rehumaning was the most humiliating part of the path. It was just like coming down from like a really high place where I felt fairly invincible. Like I knew if someone like cut off my arm, I'd be unhappy during that like really nice transcendent state. But anything shy of arm cutting, I thought I was like pretty good. You know, if someone wasn't like dismembering me, I'd be okay. But then the rehumaning part was so humbling and like grimy.
Yeah.
But I'm glad it helps. Do Angelo's when you can. I recommend that one. It feels way better.
I will. Thank you both so much.
You're welcome. That was a great answer, Brina. I
Thanks.
like the repersoning. It's kind of like when you're rehoming a pet or something. I don't know.
It feels a lot like that. But it is like a raccoon. Like the pet is not like a cute puppy. It's like a
Yeah.
raccoon or like
Yeah.
a hyena or something weird.
Yeah. No, I'm really glad you gave that answer because it's the other side of what I said in a way. Like the redemptive love aspect is so important that you really realize you're not in control of any of it. And that's that, it's like the almost at some point almost constant surrender you're forced into shows you the way, and the way is just this. It's just how this is. It may appear as pain, sadness, grief, laughter, joy, feeling human, whatever. So yeah, okay, cool, very good. Let's move on to we'll go to the middle. How about Anna?
Hello.
Hello, hello, welcome back.
Um, yeah, I've been few months very a lot of shifting happening, and there was like holding on conceptual knowledge, like very tight holding. And then I watched your interview with Violet, her awakening story, and where she mentioned um she's really enjoying this unknown and learning to trust your intuition. And whatever she said, so something clicked and it was something like remembered. And I was sitting crying like for an hour. I just like, how could I forget it? How could I forget it? I don't even know what I remembered, but it felt like unknownness. And when you sit in that unknownness, it feels like it dissolves knowledge and it dissolves a sense of self. And that followed, it was like a lot of emptiness perceived, like just like felt emptiness. And like all appearances, like they became like a dream like empty, no substance type of way. And there was like a lot of shooting something, like something was shooting up in the head. And that whenever that happened, I'm just waking up in the mornings and that happens, and body was having like physiological fear response to that, but there was no psychological fear to that. And then at some stage, one day it shot it up in the head, and then it felt like something like shovels it back into body, and this emptiness changed in quality. It became more like oily density richness type of way. Yeah, and there was a lot of, like trying to find where I am, or, like trying to find something what I am. And it was like contracting here-ness and like expanding like nowhere. But that's also that has settled. And it feels like Kelly says now, you're here, you're nowhere, and you're everywhere simultaneously. That type of way. And that, I don't know, that's part what people say, that's that chitananda, that ananda part, when you just feel good because you are, not because you do something, not because you have something. You just sit and you just feel good. Sometimes it comes and goes like that. But anyway, with all that, there is a lot of sensitivity has increased. And like Adyashanti says, like as awakening past, like responsibility increases also. And when I interact with people, I really feel like my own stuff and their own stuff. and it feels like I'm holding this like space for anything, because like, I can see they are not there to address their own stuff, like because they are unconscious on their patterns. So there is no point for me to lash out or defend or something like that. So it just kind of holds space. But that has brought up, I think that's something what I felt like all my life, like feeling alone and the longing for connecting, for deep connection. And it was like one day I just felt so strongly that longing as that aloneness. And then it turned out into something like trying to grasp, but nothing. You can, nothing. Like you can't even hold on anything. And there was like a lot of frustration came up. And like whenever this something is, like emotional comes up, it feels like body like literally like body like leans in, and it feels like you're dying into that, and something gets like reborn like through this body form, like borns and just like expresses itself out, and it's like very intense and it's like very direct, like just like here, and you just feel everything. And like another thing I have noticed, like when something happens, like this openness, and then mine just stop, yep, and it feels like it's closing like a flower. And then that you lean back and it opens up again, and you're fully exposed, like to this, whatever this is. And that's here is like a core where that like hurt, that pain feels. And whatever this is, it's like that warm sunshine, like has that healing effect on this. Yeah, but that how do you navigate relationship with people I interact with on daily basis who are like emotionally immature, emotionally unavailable? Like, because apart from holding space, it feels like there's nothing else I can do. There are like, responses in the moment, and there is assertiveness if that is needed, setting boundaries and things like that. But sometimes it feels, like I'm like single mom holding, holding children. Yeah. And it feels like that would give that feeling of I'm alone.
Thank you. Yeah. Barine, did you want to start or should I start?
Why don't you start? I was very moved by your share, but I don't quite know what to say yet.
Hey, Anna. Okay. Do you want to say hi real quick so I can see your face again?
Hi.
Okay, let's do it. So yeah, I like Barina said, I was also moved just listening to you. Every time I listen to you, it feels like you're giving a sad song or something. So yeah, and I'm just going, oh yeah, that's how that goes, and then this happens, and then the energy goes that way, and then the emotion comes through, and the body processes it, and it feels personal and impersonal, and like all those things, very I would say reminiscent of my experience. Uh, and the question that you asked about managing situations, energy, relational things with people, I think I want to just give it a broad brushstroke at first, and that is for anyone listening, the more you wake up, the clearer that things get, the more that's going to happen. You're going to pick up people's energy. You're going to pick up their repressed emotions. I mean, pick up like not just go, oh, they're repressing sadness. Like you're going to feel sadness. Your body's going to pick it up literally. And that doesn't go away, it gets more and more. So the answer in my experience is, well, I can't give you like an exact answer because it's such a dynamic world, right? There's so much dynamism in who you're even in front of. Sometimes you can't help it. You may have a job where you just have to work with one challenging coworker or something. And sometimes it's family. Like some people have families that are so energetically dense or, maybe even toxic in some sense that they have to make decisions. I can't even be around my family, or I can only be around them so much. It's very dynamic, of course. My answer is to trust your own ability to have this bandwidth of emotional experience and empathic experience, that it's okay in and of itself. And at the same time, you really have to take care of yourself. It's really, really important because just by being around people, you're already taking care of them. You're doing whether you know it or not, you're having an effect on people all the time. And it's a compassionate thing to do to literally collect people's pain. They may not even know you're doing it. It's not like you pat yourself on the back. It's just happening. So you really have to be kind to yourself and give yourself the permission to manage your boundaries. And sometimes it's just a statement of boundary to somebody or how much time you need on your own. And it's totally okay if some people are very challenging. It's totally okay to just not interact with that person unless you really have to, or in small amounts, because it's going to affect you so much, and it's going to affect how you interact with others and your availability and so forth. So, I think what happens often is we get so open and we feel a lot of compassion and love moving through that it's like, I should be available to everyone all the time. And that doesn't work that way. Like your body will take a toll from that very quickly. And so that energy management and space management is really important. And you just find the recipe that works for you. But really key is giving yourself permission to do that, to spend as much time as you need to and sitting in practice alone, and or with others. And just realizing in the relative world, there are going to be some people who are much harder to be around. And that's okay. And it's also okay to mitigate that effect by spending less time around that person. So hopefully that helps, but it is something, this exact thing is what comes up in deeper realization for people.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Barine, did you want to add anything?
Yes. Okay. Can you say something, Anna, so I can see your face?
Hi.
Okay, great. Thanks. Hi. Wait, you disappeared again.
I'm
One more
here.
time. Okay, thank you. My Zoom was being weird. It was so fun listening to you because it was like watching this like frothing ocean of being. And at the end, you're like, Anna, how do you relate to people? Like picturing this frothing ocean trying to order like a coffee at Starbucks or something. You're really alive right now. And I think you're doing, the body part. The Angela's called it like the feminine part of the path. You haven't just done the transcendent, like you've like crashed back in and it's very alive in you. I feel my own energy body coming more to life when I listen to you. Just three really quick things, and they don't really relate to each other. But like one, you should practice closing. I don't know that everyone would agree with that.
صداتو هی باید قطع کنم تا بشنوم. بگو بهم.
Sorry, hold on. Let me just mute that person
Thank you.
real quick.
Appreciate it. Okay, Anna, one more time, say something so I can see you again. All right. Thank you. Appreciate it. So one, practice closing. Like I used to have to go into an office when I was really, really permeable at one point, and I would feel actually sick because everyone was so tense and stressed. They weren't mean, like they were nice people, but they were just totally interested in something different than what I was in, and the way they were holding their nervous systems would actually make me start feeling sick. So I would go outside in the sun or like lay in the grass somewhere where I wasn't going to be seen, and I would open because like grass energy is really nice, sky energy is really nice, sunlight is really nice. I would go somewhere where I felt good and practice opening, and then you can like inhale all of it. And then I would almost go back inside to the office and like close back down, which doesn't feel great. It feels a little like holding your breath because you're in a room that smells bad, but it still feels better than being open, like too open. So when you have to be around people that don't feel good, and not feel good because they're triggering your shadow, and it's actually good in my opinion to be around those people because you want that shit in you to be triggered and worked through and made conscious. But when they're actually just like they're really dissociated, that seems to be the hardest one for me to be around. When someone's like really checked out, I start getting physically uncomfortable, and then I would just close around them to the extent I needed to be around them. And then the second thing has become like a junkie for people who have your level of being. And I don't know where you're going to find it. Like sometimes it's in awakening communities, sometimes it's in people who are slightly insane, like very slightly schizophrenic. Sometimes it's in people who are like really good dancers. It's not always in the awake folks or the people interested in standard awakening. Sometimes it's in like wild gurus with personality disorders that you got to be careful about. But like go find who actually has that a corresponding aliveness that you have, because it'll feel really nice to be around them. That won't mean they're emotionally mature. That won't mean that they're like good friends or partners for you, but just finding that taste in other people or places. Like sometimes I'm so far from Christian, but like churches have a lot of that aliveness sometimes. And like you can go and kind of open and it'll like froth back at you and it will be really nice. So find wherever you can find the alive, the being quality that you have, because when it resonates in someone else, it's like very nourishing, like it feeds you for a
Yes.
while.
Yeah. It's, like when it's very rarely I can connect because this what is coming out, it's always been there and it feels overwhelming for other people. And I always felt like something is wrong with me, and like I can literally feel like I'm taking like a whole space with this energy myself. And that can be suffocating for many people. But when I find someone I can really click on that level, it just feels like two balls are like bouncing like wildly, and you just go like completely crazy, and you just have so much fun, like completely unlimited, and it's so free and it's so wild. It's just so good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. And you can take that intensity because what you're talking about is like being, right? And like like Angela was saying it to someone earlier, like everything has this being, like this cup has being, it has Shakti, whatever you want to call it, and it's like resonating back at you. But it doesn't always have to be the same flavor of intense. So say you took that energy and you didn't hide it and you went and you held a newborn baby. Right? You wouldn't be giving her or him the like crazy bouncing ball energy. You would take that same intensity and like turn it into like holding or
Yes.
soothing and give her
Yeah.
that. So
That
with different,
mommy's feeling, that
exactly.
nurturing. Yes. Uh-huh.
So you can learn to change the flavor of your intensity for the person that you're with when you want to meet them, if you want to meet them, and you're
Uh-huh.
not going to want to meet everyone, but then you can be like, oh, this is when I make it more sexual. This is when it's like when I make it more intellectual. This is what it's like when I make it more friendly. This is what it's like when I make it more soothing. And then you'll have more range and you can connect with more people. You still can't connect with everyone with that energy. You'll blow a lot of people out. And the other thing you can do is if you have people close to you that already love you, that you're already connected to, that aren't going to get scared of you, you can infect them with it. And actually, even if you don't mean to, you will infect them with it. But you can increase the being in another person without ever talking about it, without ever preaching at them about it. But if you hug someone with that being, you will enliven being in their body. Or if you talk to them about how their day was with that being and they're already close to you, there's already like love or attachment between you, they'll start resonating more with that. And they might not like that at first, or they might like it, it depends on the person, but you
Yeah.
can sort of like create more of that. You can certainly create it in your pets. Like pets are great because they're not really doing
Yeah.
much other than being. So if you go give them a lot of nice being, they'll give you a lot of nice being back, and you can just create a little like hot tub of it.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Yeah, okay, that's very good advice. So you can shape it and shift it in different ways. Yeah, yeah. Thank
And
you.
yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you, Anna.
Thank you.